This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com in review. What I'm looking at today is 1996's Space Trekkers, directed by Stuart Gordon. And this is probably one of the most fascinating movies I've ever seen. So let me give you the story first. The story revolves around Dennis Hopper, who happens to be a space trekker, and he's transporting cargo to Earth. And he's not aware of what's in his vehicle, though it has the power to change the world. The people behind this movie are some of the most interesting people and innovative in movies. You have Stuart Gordon directing. He's the person who did Herbert West Reanimated, From Beyond, Dagon, and Robot Jox, which is, I think, great. And Pre-Transformers is better than most of those movies. If you haven't seen Robot Jox, check it out. It's really good. So you have Stuart Gordon directing. You have special effects supervised by Brian Johnson. You might ask yourself, who is Brian Johnson? And if you follow movies to any degree, you should know who Brian Johnson is. He's the person behind the effects for movies like 2001: A Space Odyssey, The Empire Strikes Back, Alien, Aliens, Dragon Slayer. One of the, by my reckoning, most innovative people in effects today. Master of his craft. And you have Screaming Mad George. Like with Brian Johnson, if you watch movies to any degree, you should know who Screaming Mad George is. He's the person who did the effects work for, I want to say Nightmare on Elm Street 5, where the girl was lifting weights and she changes to a big cockroach. That was Screaming Mad George. The effects for Society, which to this day are unsurpassed by my reckoning, Screaming Mad George. Absolutely brilliant effects person. You have Dennis Hopper in the cast. You have Stephen Dorff. And with all these people, you would think that the movie would reflect the participation of such people. And it doesn't. Space Trekkers is a weird, campy little movie. And that's a pity, because it's a science fiction movie from the perspective of a working class person, which is not something you often see. Though the approach of the movie is so wrong, as well as the whole production design aspect. By which I mean, there's a scene where Dennis Hopper's character stops at a diner, which looks like a diner from the 50s or 60s or something. It's an oddly retro look, and it feels more like Stuart Gordon is making a parody more than anything else. And there's a kind of, what's the word? It's not sarcastic, but there's a certain Paul Verhoeven quality to some of it, which is to say you have lots of advertisements everywhere, and space is cluttered and filled with crap, human-made crap in particular. And that's interesting, but as I said, the whole approach to this movie is very campy, and it undermines a lot of the effort that goes into it. And Dennis Hopper is not a bad actor, not by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, he's really good in some stuff, not so much here. He doesn't seem to be taking anything terribly seriously, and if he had turned at some point and winked at the camera, I would not have been shocked. He doesn't, but if he had, it would be fitting with the aesthetic this movie seems to be working with, which is fascinating also because Stephen Dorff is like in another movie entirely. Now, he's not Laurence Olivier by any stretch of the imagination, but he inhabits the role, and it feels natural. No matter how absurd something he says is, or how he has to dress, it works because he takes it entirely seriously. There is no winking to be found in Stephen Dorff's performance. It is probably the strongest of the movie. It's really good, and it doesn't fit here. because the movie doesn't take itself seriously. In fact, he appears to take it more seriously than Stuart Gordon, the director, takes it. So it just makes things kind of not mesh particularly well. And that's probably the first and last time I will say that a really good performance somehow undermines a production. In any case, it just doesn't help this movie. And I mentioned earlier that one of the movies that Brian Johnson worked on was Aliens. There is a member of the cast of Alien 3 in this movie, and that's Charles Dance, who is a great actor, but not here. And again, it's less his performance than, well, his performance isn't great either, but I think that's more because that's what was asked of him, more so than what he's capable of doing or not doing. It's very campy. Everything about this movie is campy and silly, and it confuses me because I don't know what it's trying to be. As I mentioned earlier, I like the working person aesthetic of the movie, though I wish it had just taken the material more seriously. Nope, get rid of the campiness, well, most of it anyway, although campiness goes a long way. Just be done with it and have the production feel more grounded. This movie deserved to be treated like Alien in terms of its visuals, because there are people on it who could certainly help to bring that about. Now, I don't know the budget of Space Trekkers, by the way, though it's not a cheap film, I don't think, but it looks cheap. I think a great summary of Space Trekkers is if you took Aliens and combined it with Flash Gordon. And that's not a great thing. So what do you think? This is Brian with screenfiles.com and review. Do you agree, disagree? Let me know down below. And as usual, consider a like or a follow.